The context is companies that take the financial hit, but also states that try to push back on it. And the latest is that we understand a group of states are actually suing to block this in particular. Do you think that that's going to gain any traction?
I do think that it's going to gain traction because what the states are doing that's different than some of the lawsuits that have already been filed is they're making a legal argument based on their specific state economies, which I think is a really important argument because it goes directly against the claim that a lot of opponents to the H-1B visa have, that the H-1B visa is actually harmful for the U.S. economy. The lawsuit that was filed by California and the 19 additional states essentially argues that this $100,000 fee is going to worsen labor shortages within other important sectors that exist within the state economy by making it more difficult to fill spots for occupations that are already experiencing shortages, such as physicians or researchers or teachers, nurses, for example. And so I think that this lawsuit puts states in a position where they can actually show harm in a way that's more effective than some of the lawsuits that have already been filed.
Their argument is that no presidential administration can rewrite immigration law, is what they're taking. And I think it's the third challenge, at least, that we've seen to this particular fee increase. But on the flip side, the president and the administration would say we need this fee because H-1B is being abused. What evidence is there for that, from your perspective, Hiba?
I think the more important evidence is when you take a look at the H-1B filing process in and of itself, it actually has several checks and balances that are already built in to ensure that the H-1B visa is not being abused or misused in any way. And in particular, one of the core components of filing an H-1B visa is to be able to demonstrate back to the government that the filing of this visa is not going to displace a qualified U.S. worker. So I think that what's more important to focus on are the checks and balances and the safeguards that are already in place for the H-1B visa to prevent the fraud and misuse, because the highly restrictive policies for folks that are actually proponents of the H-1B visa create a new category of risk, which is that this is actually going to hamper and diminish the American innovation and the U.S. companies leading the charge on global innovation.
Now, we take it to another extreme. And what's interesting is there's actually blowback, not coming from Democrat states who are suing, but actually conservative lawmakers who are saying that in some ways Trump is supporting yet more legal migration and immigration into the country. They're criticizing President Trump for supporting more visas in particular to allow the entry of high-skilled foreign workers. Is there any mounting fervor around this that you're hearing, Hiba, or something that companies are worried about that names like Republican Chip Roy would actually manage to prevent legal immigration at this time?
I think, I think that the concern in the industry is more so based on the data. I think that we're far out enough from the beginning of the year to be able to actually measure the data in an effective way. And I think that what we're starting to see is U.S. companies starting to grapple with the decision about whether they want to continue to invest in other countries where the talent, the high-skilled workers in particular, are more inclined to go. As opposed to, the talent that may be a little bit more concerned about staying here in the U.S. So said another way, I think the concern in the industry is whether some of these larger companies are going to choose to offshore, for example. And another really important component of this is a lot of the folks in the industry are actually specifically watching how other countries are responding to some of these more restrictive immigration policies, namely, China and Canada being some top examples. For example, China recently released the K visa for global tech talent, which is specifically aimed at attracting international tech workers. And that was done in direct response to the U.S. tightening its immigration policies and this new $100,000 fee. So what I think the concern is here is whether the talent is going to be incentivized to choose another country, whether other countries are going to be more inclined to have more open immigration policies in an effort to try to attract that high-skilled talent, and what that eventually means for the global success of U.S. companies.
We've got 30 seconds. Is it big companies that hurt the most here, Hiba, or is it smaller ones?
So it's usually the larger tech companies in particular that garner the most attention. But it's also important to point out that when it came to first-time H-1B visa
Yeah.
petitions for new employment in fiscal year 2025, over 28,000 companies filed at least one.